Welcome everyone to another Silicon Labs product podcast. In this episode, I'm really excited to introduce a great new resource that Silicon Labs has put together for our customers. Our IoT team has developed a thorough reference design to help our engineers looking into building a door lock. So if you guys out there are looking into door locks, this is the episode for you. To help us, today I've invited two people who can answer a lot of questions about the content and this reference design. I have Sean Scannell. He's a product manager for the IoT wireless group, really focused on end devices, similar to the door lock. I also have Ben Klenkelheffer, and he is a systems design engineer for the same IoT wireless group and was really involved in putting together the hardware to this reference design. Thanks for joining the podcast today, guys.
Thanks for having us, Kyle.
Sure. Well, before we get started, Sean, I think it would be great if you could take a look at this reference design. I saw you present it at the WorksWith event, and it was a full 60-minute session, and you guys did a great job. But is there a way that you can give us an overview of what this reference design is and what's involved with it?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the question. So this reference design is kind of our way of removing some of the barriers to entry for someone who's really just getting started with door locks. So what we've included is we have used one of our own kits at Silicon Labs, the MG21, which we've then hooked up to several peripherals to provide both access points, and also we've attached a solenoid to kind of demonstrate the either extension or retraction of the deadbolt to kind of round out the functionality. Included in this presentation, we also had our justifications for several of the decisions we made. We walked through several of the demos, kind of showing all of the features and how the hardware all interacts with the back-end software. And then we've kind of rounded it out with several market concerns or questions that you'd really want to evaluate before continuing if you were trying to make this a full product that you were offering at your company. So that kind of rounds out what we have in the presentation. And then the last thing that we did is we went through some Q&A.
Yeah, I'll put the link into the details of this podcast so they can jump back in and rewatch it. So that's great. So it sounds like there's a lot of content in that design using our EFR32 device. And then you guys, as you said, pulled in a lot of those external components that have a lot of involvement with our wireless SoC, but it's not traditionally what you'd find on our website. So that's great. Well, Ben, as I mentioned, you are really the hardware guy that it sounds like for customers that are getting started, this would be a great reference design for them. But why don't you share, maybe there were a couple challenges that you found when you were working on this, and maybe it's something that a customer would recognize. And where did you maybe spend the most time when you were putting together this project?
Well, I guess just in general, here at Silicon Labs, we don't spend a whole lot of time building actual devices using our products. So the challenges that we faced were normal challenges that any customer would face, starting off with just a bare EFR chip and then adding on peripherals. So working through driver issues or adding in other dev kits. This was a Flywire demo, so there was some challenges connecting devices because the WSDK dev board we provide breaks out everything to pins. They're easy to access, but may not necessarily be in a configuration that is ideal on a PCB.
Yeah, I mean, in the demo I saw, it's pretty impressive with all the, as you said, the fly wires interconnecting biometric fingerprint sensor, right? And then what else was in the design? There was a keypad. What were some of the other things that you were wiring up?
Yeah, we had a fingerprint sensor, a facial recognition sensor, the normal keypad you would find on any door lock. Yeah, and the normal push button.
Yeah. So, that was definitely, I can imagine interconnecting all that would have been definitely a challenge. What about the software side of things? Did you work with a contractor or did you work with our internal team on some of the software development?
Yeah, I supported a subcontractor in writing the firmware and everything through our Simplicity Studio platform.
Great. Yeah. So Simplicity Studio, they'll be able to leverage Simplicity Studio with this reference design.
Yes. Only issues we ran into there was normal ones with devices that we chose normally would come with a Linux driver. So we had to find drivers compatible with our OS.
Well, you know what? All that work really paid off. Like I said, I watched the course, and if you watch the full 60 minutes, you're definitely going to see all the content that you guys put into this and all the effort that was put into it. Great job by you guys. But Ben, maybe you can explain how can our listeners get access to this reference design and what's included? What do they get their hands on?
So the full studio project is in the GitHub repo, along with all documentation to start from scratch, hardware and software wise.
Okay. And there's no, they don't need to sign up for anything, or they just go to GitHub and grab it.
Yep, you would just need Simplicity Studio access and an IAR compiler license.
Okay, so it does use the IAR.
Yes.
Okay, that's good for them to know. And maybe I can put the GitHub repository link in the podcast notes as well. So I'll have the course link as well as that GitHub for our listeners so they can take advantage of it. And then is there anything else that you think that the customers might need to get started? I mean, to do this? Sean mentioned the MG, was it the 1.2 was used? Is there a kit that they need?
Bare minimum, you would need the MG21 dev kit. With all the part numbers are listed in documentation in the Git repo.
All right. Well, Sean, I'll throw one question out to you. You are, as I mentioned, the product manager for these types of wireless devices. So I wonder if you could talk just maybe for a minute or two about what you see with door locks. I know you mentioned a few things in the course, but maybe for our listeners, you could talk. We put this reference design together. What do you see maybe in the next year or two with companies looking to evaluate door locks?
That's a really good question. Honestly, I'm a little bit biased, but I find door locks an incredibly interesting market. In the US, you kind of had a little bit of a standard in terms of the deadbolt usage as the kind of main locking mechanism. But that's actually not as universal as one might think. Especially if you go back through time, there are houses that are built in different decades, generally have a lot of different variations in the lock. So I would suggest that this reference design is kind of approaching a deadlock kind of use case, but it can also be modified very easily depending on the type of lock. So I would say that there's a lot of opportunities out there for companies that are investigating locks. There are so many different geographical varieties from houses over time, so that there's quite a wide variety of, I would say, market opportunities for companies trying to get into this. Additionally, it provides a lot of opportunities with the short-term rental markets. This has been something that we've kind of seen as a natural partnership between door locks and either Airbnbs or other short-term rentals or even apartment blocks, where the access control really needs to be changed on maybe not a day-to-day basis, but surely a week-to-week or month-to-month. So this provides the landowner of the house to modify access if a tenant leaves or a new tenant arrives, without having to either physically be present or have that much of a change in physical keys. So it's a very exciting market, and kind of a lot of this development, as well as just, increased adoption. We believe that this market to be in a real early adopter stage still, as many people still aren't aware of brands of the door lock market or have one themselves. So we're really excited to see how this market grows and how it kind of builds in synergies with other industries as time progresses.
I've not heard about these storage facilities, but I can absolutely see that. There's about 4 new storage facilities just between my home and the office being built. I can imagine that it's a lot easier for them to install smart door locks versus all those individual padlocks that can walk away. And it's easier for them if they plan to build a smart storage facility. They could put those smart door locks in there and lock those storage facilities. So that's something I hadn't thought about. So that's great insight.
Storage facilities, apartments, hotels, even, just houses themselves with having your own house. And a lot of the lock companies are already building their own locks. So, you have Kwikset and Schlage. So if you are looking to buy a lock, you have one. That also provides a great opportunity for new entrants to come in and with all these different opportunities that are present.
Well, that's more reason for the people that are listening to, again, rewatch the WorksWith course that you guys provided a full hour of more detail than we've covered in this podcast. And then the link to the GitHub that Ben mentioned to see the type of reference design content that we can provide the customers to get started. Because as you mentioned, it looks like it's a really growing market, and these opportunities that even just you introducing on this podcast today, people might not realize are right in front of them. Well, thanks guys for spending the time to share with the listeners this information. This door lock reference design seems like a great opportunity for customers. And as I mentioned, a really great job by you guys to put it together for this event. And I'm sure that our listeners found everything that you shared very valuable. I'll just remind our listeners that I put the link in the details. And so you can click on that and you'll be able to go straight to that 60-minute course where Sean and Ben go into detail about the reference design. Other than that, hey, you guys, thank you very much for joining today for the podcast.
Thank you for having us, Kyle. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks to our listeners. Again, it's great to have the listeners listening to our podcast, and we look forward to having you join us for our future episodes. So please take care.